Hello and welcome back to Globesweeper Hex Puzzler. Today, I figure we'll take a break from all of the cluster and line levels and we'll get started on the knot mechanic, and probably some other levels, but let's get started on this one. So, the knot mechanic is pretty simple, not too much to read. If it says knot 1, that means that surrounding this one tile, there can't only be one reactive tile. So, we have to have 0 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. It doesn't matter, just not 1. So, simple enough. That said though, this entire level is not so simple. You would think they would ease you in with easier knot levels, but no, these are pretty tricky, so let's get to them, especially one I'll probably save for last. So here, this first little puzzle, we have a 5 tile here in the center, a knot 2 here, which means we have to have either 0, 1, or 3 out of these. A knot 2 here, so we need to have 0 or 1, we can't have both. And then a knot 3 here. This tile is the key here to breaking into this area. Because we have this 5, we know that out of these 6 tiles, we will remove 1 tile for the 5. And here, we know that this knot 2 tile cannot have both of these tiles marked. So at most we can mark one of these tiles, and we could have no tiles for the knot 2. But since we have a 5 tile, if we can at most mark one of these tiles, that means we will need all 4 of these other tiles to make 5 tiles for this 5. And in doing so, we can now look at this knot 2, which now has 2 tiles, but we can't let it have 2, which means we have to add another tile to make it a 3. And on this side, we have a knot 3 with 2 tiles. We can't add another tile because then we give it 3, so we have to remove this one. And now we get a 1 tile here, a knot 1 tile that already has 1 tile, which means we have to we have to mark this one, because if we remove this one, then we leave only 1 tile. So that's marked. That means this knot 2 tile has to have this tile removed, or it would have 2, so that's gone. And then this 2 lets us know that this is gone. Alright, next little puzzle here. We have a knot 3, a knot 1, knot 2, and this lonely 1. So here, this lonely little one lets us know that one of these 2, and not more, will be marked. Then if we look at the knot 1 tile here in the center, we know that we'll have one of these 2 tiles, but not more than that. But we can't only have 1 tile for the center knot 1, which means since we'll have one of these tiles, we have to also have this tile to make it 2 for the knot 1 tile. So that one has to be marked. Now, because we've marked this one, we can look at the knot 2, which only has 2 tiles, and now we have 1 already marked, and the only options for this one were to have 0 tiles or 1 tile. We can't mark both of these, so because we have 1 marked, we now have to remove this tile. And that gives us this tile for the 1, and finally, knot 3, we already have 2 marked, so we can't mark an additional tile, or we would give 3 tiles to this knot 3, so that's gone. This is the one that's the hardest, let's leave that for last. This one, how did we do this one again? Right, yeah, okay, so we have a 4 here in the center, and what you want to look at are these 2 knot 2s. Same as in the first little puzzle we did, this knot 2 can have either 0 here, or 1 here. It cannot have both here. So at most we can have 1 tile here, and at most we can have 1 tile here. And then if we count for the 4, we'll have at most 1 tile, 2 tiles, and then we have to have 3 and 4. So we have to mark these 2 tiles, and now we know we have to have 1 tile here and 1 tile here, we can't have no tile. But since we marked these 2 tiles, now we can look at the knot 1 tiles. So this knot 1 tile, we have 1 tile for, which means we have to mark another tile, because we can't only have it be 1 tile. So that's marked, and same here, 1 tile here, so this tile has to be marked. And that now completes the 4 here. Now, this final puzzle. This one is pretty tricky. So here we have no normal tiles whatsoever, it's all just knot tiles. Here, around this 4, we need to have any number except 4, and here we have a knot 2, and, well, we have 2 knot 2s, 3 knot 0s, and 1 knot 1. and the 1 here is the key. So because the not 1 is here, that lets us know that we either have to mark none of these two, or both of them. Those are the only two options we have. So if we think through it, what would happen if we remove both of these tiles in order to satisfy this not 1 tile? So both of these are removed. This is something I could show in Paint just to make it clearer, but I don't think we should need that. So these tiles are both removed. That means these not 0 tiles, which can't have 0, since we remove this tile, we will then have to mark this tile, and for this not 0, since we remove this tile, we will have to mark this tile. So at this point, we've removed these 2 tiles and marked these 2 tiles. Then, this not 2 tile has 1 tile in that case, this not 2 tile has 1 tile in that case, and because we can't add another one to either of these not 2 tiles, that means we have to remove this tile and we have to remove this tile. Since we've removed both of these tiles, we have now removed all the tiles for this final not 0, which doesn't work. So that entire chain just tells us that for this not 1, we cannot remove both of these tiles, we will have to mark them. That's the only possible way. Again, could show that in Paint just to make it a little clearer, but I hope you could follow along with that. Now I think you'd look at either of these 2 tiles. It's kind of a tricky thing. This took me a while as well. So either of these 2 tiles cannot be marked, because if we just try and think about that, so these not 0s can have this tile marked. That would work for the not 0. It can have 1, it can have 2. But let's say we mark this. This is where I maybe should show this in Paint, just to illustrate it. I'm gonna do that. Alright, here we go. This will just make it a little easier. So, you can test either one of these 2 tiles, just thinking through it. Let's start with this one. What happens if we use this tile? The not 0 tile is fine with it. That's okay. It can have 1, it can have 2. This not 2 tile, since we now have 1 marked, means we can't mark another tile, or we give it 2. So that means this tile has to be removed in this scenario. And then this not 0 tile here can't have no tile here, and because we've already removed this tile, we now know we have to mark this tile. And then on this one, not 2, we have 1, which means we can't add another one in, or we get 2. So that has to be removed. But now we've created 4 for the not 4, which doesn't work. And same if we do the other thing. If we mark this tile instead, then we get the same thing in a chain the other way. So not 2 means we can't mark this, not 0 means we have to mark this, not 2 means we have to remove this, and then we once again get 4 in the center for this not 4. So these 2 tiles cannot be marked, either one of them or both, it doesn't matter. So those we can remove. So those are gone. And then we get a 2 here and a 1 here. And that's the level. Very complicated. Once again, I'm sure maybe there's some better way to think about that I'm like overcomplicating this, but you know, that's one reliable way to solve it, I suppose. Sometimes you just kind of have to try your way forward mentally, not like actually guess, but just think it through in the sense that if I were to do this, what would happen? And then you run into a logical block that tells you, oh, you can't do that. And then you have to just do the opposite, essentially. But yeah, that's the first not level. I'm gonna leave these for now, and instead go into this one, just because we've left this one for a long time, and this unlocks a whole bunch of the new area and stuff. So, the next max chain level, link it round. So, max chains we haven't used much, but a max 2 chain means that in these 6 tiles around it, we can only have chains of a maximum of 2. And we already have a maximum of 2. So we have to disconnect this tile, because otherwise we would make a 3, and we have to disconnect this tile, or we would make a 3. And also, keep in mind that when there's a max chain or a min chain, we'll get to those, but when there's one of these greater than or lesser than sign, that means we have to have at least one area surrounding it, or within the designated area, if it's a line or area, that is exactly the number that it says. So because this is a max 2 chain, we have to have at least one area that is a 2 chain. But now we have a 1 here, so we can remove these. We get a 3 here. Now that completes the 2 here. Here we have a max 1 chain, and we already have 1 tile here, so this tile can't be marked, or it would make a 2 chain. But we could still mark this one, we don't know for yet. And then here we have a maximum 3 chain. Sorry, I'm being like confused by this stuff myself. A max 3 chain. So we need to have chains that are 3 or fewer, but we have to have 1 chain that is 3 within this area of 5. And because it's an area of 5, the only way to make a 3 chain is these 3 tiles, these 3 tiles, or these 3 tiles. So either way, the center tile has to be marked here. If we remove that, there is no longer any way to make a 3 chain. So this one has to be marked, and now because we've made a 3 chain, we have to disconnect it, because we can't make more than a 3 chain. But we could still have this tile, we don't know yet. And then once again here, we have a max 3 chain. We don't yet know if this tile is marked, but we do know that this center tile is marked, because if we remove this center tile, then there is no way to make a 3 chain anymore, so that can be marked. But now we have to leave this for a second. Here we can't do anything, but here we have a max 3 chain with 1 tile and only 4 possible tiles. That means that since we have 1 tile, the only way to make a 3 chain is to use these 3 tiles. If we were to mark this tile, there is no longer any way to make a chain of 3. So we have to mark these 3 and remove this tile. So essentially you can just think about it as, since there's a max 3 chain and we have 4 tiles, the 2 center tiles have to be marked regardless of what other tiles you have marked. And then we get a 1 here, and now we get a max 2 chain in 3 tiles. That means that the center tile will have to be marked to give us the 2 chain. So either we have a 2 chain here, or we have a 2 chain here. So this tile will now have to be marked. Now that gives us the next step here for the max 3. So this max 3 can't have this tile now, or it will have a chain of 4. So that has to be removed, and then we have to make a chain of 3, and the only way to do that is to add in this tile. This 2 is done, and the 2 here. Here we have a max 2 chain, which again has 3 tiles, so the center tile has to be marked. And now we have a 2 chain, so we have to disconnect it. And here, same thing again, 3 tiles. We have to mark the center tile, and then disconnect it. And then same here again, 3 tiles, have to mark the center tile, and disconnect it. And again, mark this, disconnect this. And then this 2 now only has 1 option left to get 2 tiles, which completes this 2. This max 1 chain. We already have 1 tile in, so we can't mark this one to make a 2 chain, so that's gone. And then this 2, let's mark this. And then this, again, max 1 chain. We have 1 tile, we can't add another one here to make a 2 chain. And then here, minimum 3, or, Jesus, maximum 3. I will confuse that so many times, I'm sorry. Maximum 3, we only have 3 tiles left, so all of them have to be marked. That completes the 2 here, and the 1. And then again here, we have 4 tiles for the maximum 3 chain. We have to make a 3 chain, so we have to mark the 2 center tiles, which now already gives us a 3 chain, so that has to be disconnected. And then the 1 tile is done. This 1 tile only has 1 left. This one is done, and this one is done. And here, once again, we have 3 tiles. We have to mark the center tile for the max 2 chain, so that's marked, and this is disconnected. And then here, we have a max 2 chain with already two chains. We can't add the middle tile, or we just create 1 5 chain. So that is disconnected, gives us a 2, that's already done. And then now we don't know here, but this one, a max 2 chain, has 1 tile, which is fine, but we need to also have a chain of 2, and the only way to do that is to add in these 2 tiles, which completes this 2, and we disconnect this tile. And then just finally here, there's a 2 chain here for this max 2, so this tile has to be removed. I kind of missed that earlier. Alright, I guess we'll do little max as well? Sure, that should be fine. Let's do little max. Alright, another max chain level. So, right here, same thing as we just said, though I guess I should reiterate in case you only needed help with this level and not the previous one. So we have a max 2 chain with 3 tiles. That means that regardless of what happens, we have to mark the center tile of the 3, because the only way to make a chain of 2, which is necessary for this, even though we can have chains of fewer than 2, we will have to have at least one chain that is 2. So because of that, we have to either mark these 2 or these 2, so in either case, this one will be marked, and that gives us a tile for this max 1 chain, which can't chain in this direction or this direction, so these tiles can be removed. That gives us a 1 here, lets us remove these, a 3 here. Here we have a max 2 again, with 3 tiles, so the center tile has to be marked, which now completes the 2 chains, so we can disconnect it here. Here we have a max 2 chain, with a 2 chain right here, so we have to disconnect it here, because we can't have a greater chain. But we could still have another one here, we don't know that yet. It could be 2, or it could be 1, so you can't say anything there. But here we get a 3, with only 2 more options, so there we go. Here now, we have a max 2 chain, with a 2 chain, so we have to disconnect the 2 chain to preserve it, in that sense. Here, we have a 1 tile that's already fulfilled, so these get removed. And we still don't know if this is marked or not, so we have to wait with that. We can do something here, but I think we can also do stuff elsewhere, but I guess it's fine. We have to do this at some point anyway. So, here we have a 1 tile. Okay, this was harder to explain than I thought, so I'm just gonna show this in Paint. Alright, good old Paint helps to illustrate things. So, we have 1 tile, of 1 tile here, so we need either this tile or this one marked, and then we have a max 4 chain here. Let's just think through what happens in either case. So, if we mark this top tile, that means we have to disconnect this tile for this one. Now, to make a 4 chain in these 5 tiles, since we need a 4 chain for the max 4, the only way to do that is to mark these 4 tiles, because we can't mark this tile, or there is no way to complete a 4 chain. It would be a 5 chain in whichever way you do it. So, if this tile is marked, we have to mark these tiles for a 4 chain, and then disconnect this tile. Now, if we do the opposite, and we mark this tile will have to be removed, and then we now have to make a 4 chain like this, and disconnect it here. Those are the only 2 options. And in both of those options, these 2 tiles have to be marked. We can't remove either one of these tiles, or there will no longer be a way to make a 4 chain, because if we have a hole here, we'll have a hole here or here, and that doesn't leave enough space for a 4 chain. So these 2 tiles you can already mark, even though we don't know which one we'll use here. So we mark this and this tile, and now we can look at this max 1 chain, which now has 1 tile, so we have to disconnect the neighboring tiles, like so. Then we get a 3 here, so that has to be marked. Here we have a max 1 chain, so we have to disconnect it this way, which gets us a 3 again. And then here, once again, we have a tile, so we can't mark this one, because that would be a 2 chain. And then over here, once again, we have a tile for this max 1 chain, so this tile has to be removed. We still don't know if this one is removed or not, but now we got a maximum 2 chain. Good lord, I will say that so many times. A maximum 2 chain. We have 1 tile here. We need to have a chain of 2 within these 3 tiles, so, like before, the center tile will now have to be marked. And because we marked that, we now have to disconnect these 2 tiles for this max 1 chain. And now there's only one possible option left to get the 2 chain here. And same for this max 2 chain, it's already done, so we have to disconnect this tile. And then we get a 1 here, and this 3 lets us mark that, and this 2 lets us mark this. And now, finally, we have a 1 tile here. One of these tiles, well, not finally, there's more to do, but in this little area, we need 1 of these tiles, but now at this point, since we have 3 of these tiles marked, we can no longer use this tile, because if this is marked, then this is disconnected, and then we can't make a 4 tile, because if we mark this one, it would be a 5 chain. So this has to be removed, and this now has to be marked, which now completes the 4 chain here, so this tile also has to be removed. Alright, and now we have to go back all the way here. So here we have a max 2 chain. I don't know why I didn't do this before. I mean, I guess this was the start, so you could go right or left. So here we have a max 2 chain with 1 tile. We have to add in 1 more to give it a chain of 2. So we get that. And here we have a max 1 chain with 1 tile here. We can't add another tile or it would be a 2 chain. So that has to be removed. And now we have 4 tiles for this max 3 chain, which means we have to add in the 2 center tiles here, which now gives us the 3 chain here. So this has to be disconnected. And now this max 4 chain has 2 tiles here and 1 tile here. There is only one way to make a 4 chain, and that is to connect this tile up. If we disconnect this tile, then we can't make a 4 chain, it would be a 5 chain. So that has to be marked, and these 2 have to be removed. That gives us this tile for the 2 and completes this one. And then once again, we have 4 tiles here for a max 3 chain. We have to mark the 2 center tiles because the only 2 options, the only 2 possibilities for a 3 chain here is like this or like this. And because we already have 1 tile, we know that's the chain. So this is disconnected, the 2 here is done, and the max 2 chain, we have a 2 chain, so we have to disconnect it from here, which now gives us a 1 tile and lets us remove this final tile. So there we go. I feel like my explanations are getting sloppier and sloppier by the level. So that's great, but hopefully you can still follow along. Next time, I think I wanted to go back and do a couple knot levels, but maybe I should do the min chain as well, right next to this. Could do either one. We'll see. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Hope it was helpful. Bye-bye!